2025, are you ready to rock? Dave's Killer Bread is ready to rock 2025 and your reset this January with killer taste, killer nutrition, and a killer sweepstakes to win a VIP concert prize pack with round-trip airfare, luxury hotel stay, and much more. Text RESET to 73876 and enter for a chance to win. Dave's Killer Bread. Bread amplified. No purchase necessary. Visit daveskillerbread.com/reset for details.
Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives, and Ryan Landry has been the undisputed king of New England fringe performance for years. He's a playwright and an impresario of drag theater. You can catch him every single Monday hosting Showgirls, the longest running show in Provincetown. Hi, Ryan Landry.
Hi, how are you?
How is your week going? Is this the start of Carnival Week?
Yeah, so I think now it's becoming the idea of like, better get to the grocery store now. You better stock up on just about everything you can possibly find, including like OxyContin, and like, get ready because it's going to be nuts. It's going to be really crazy here soon. But, it's so funny. Here I am at my little house on the corner of Pearl Street and Baker Ave, and it's really quite peaceful until you hear the carry-on luggage being wheeled down the pavement. You hear lots and lots of that.
So you were telling me how you first came to Provincetown in 1979. I want to hear the story of your very first trip to P-Town. Like, who are you with? How did you get here?
When the very first time I came to Provincetown, these two gorgeous dykes told me they'd take me to town. They had an MG. It was only a 2-seater car. So I had to crawl up in the fetal position because they had a convertible MG and the top was broken. So they didn't care if I curled up, and they took me from New Haven to Provincetown. Well, the bars, they didn't want to leave the bars till it closed. The bars back then closed at 4:00 in the morning in New Haven. So we finally got here around 7:30 in the morning, and I woke up from this, as a fetus, turned the corner here at Baker Ave and Pearl Street and saw this very house that I'm sitting in right now. And I said, oh my God, if this is what Provincetown's like, I want to live here, because it reminded me so much of my family's houses way up in the woods of Maine. They all live way up in the real country little towns, which are all now meth labs, but they used to be very bucolic thing. And so I said, God, if this is what it's like, I want to live here. And I ended up buying that house, the very first house I saw.
Well, what was your first impression of P-Town?
Let's just cut down to brass tacks. I mean, back then, all you cared about was getting laid and doing as many drugs as you can. I was just talking to some two friends from the UK. We were down at the beach, which is only a block from my house. It's so wonderful. I keep forgetting there's a beach down there. But anyway, we were sitting there talking, and I was saying, oh, God, we did so much drugs that we would do acid on Wednesday and mescaline on Thursday, because my friend Dave's theory was you couldn't get off on acid 2 days in a row, so you had to switch back and forth to mescaline. So it was, we were doing that much drugs. But it was crazy. We were bonkers nuts. But back then, Provincetown was very much like the Wild West. There wasn't really a police presence here, meaning what didn't feel so controlled. I remember back then, Provincetown didn't have theme weeks. So basically, it was a cool place to go all summer long. But now it's sort of like, as much as they think of it as a future forward idea, it's almost like segregation. It's almost like, bears only this week. Families only this week, muscle queens only this week. And I don't think that does a lot I believe in total diversity, meaning just like everyone and anyone who's cool. It seemed to be a lot more cool people here. I guess that's a rather long answer to a short question, Jess, but there you have it.
I mean, I follow Provincetown Archaeology on Instagram, which is a great Instagram.
There's one? I had no idea.
Yeah, no, there's an Instagram account that only shows video of P-Town like in the 80s, the 90s, the 70s. I'm pretty sure I saw like a horse-drawn carriage in one video. Like I was flipping through it the other day.
I know which video you're talking about. It's a black and white video. It's very greeny.
Mm-hmm.
My house is in that video. you'll see my house. There's a picket fence that goes along. I guess if you're looking at the video, it'd be the right side of the video, and there's a
Mhm.
woman pushing a baby carriage and another one walking with a kid, and that picket fence is my picket fence. It's this picket fence right here.
I love that you're just fully doxing yourself.
What's doxing me?
Doxing
Like
means
those dogs that are long and have short legs.
no, no, no. Doxing is if you were to just give your full address, I mean that would just be revealing. But suppose somebody
My full
else.
address is 1 Baker Avenue, Provincetown, Massachusetts, 02657. And you want my phone number? Because I don't give a fuck.
Do you want to give your social security number? I think people may
No,
want
I
that.
won't do that. That's now I get what doxing is. No, there'll be none of that.
Wait, one Baker. Do you live right by the Pilgrim House?
3 or 4 blocks away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember the Pilgrim House before it burned down, the old Pilgrim House. Oh, it was an absolutely beautiful building. Oh, it was so beautiful.
This is like Fire Island, where everything has had 9 lives. Everything's burned down and had
Yeah.
to be rebuilt.
I only spent one summer on Fire Island, and I was like 17 or something, and I just wasn't into it, and I came right back to Provincetown.
I mean, truly, one of my favorite subjects is asking people their experiences of P-Town versus Fire Island. Even though I know but I love hearing it filtered through different people.
People who have been to both places. Yeah.
I just love it. Do you know the first year that you came to P-Town?
1979.
1979. When did you first start performing?
I was a hooker for a long time back when I was a guy. I used to turn heads. Now I just turn stomachs. I think it was I wasn't making enough money hooking, so I decided I was going to do the drag competition. There was an old drag competition that was called like Putting on the Hits, and I think this was like around 82 or 3 or something. And then I said, well, I don't want to just lip sync. I want to if I'm going to do a song about like Destination Moon by Dinah Washington, which is a wonderful song. I don't know if you ever heard it. But I said, well, if I'm going to sing a song called Destination Moon, I'm going to build a giant rocket ship and I'm going to paint it. I'm going to make it out of cardboard. And I'll get the cardboard for free from the appliance store and I'll paint it with some poster paints and it's going to look shitty, but I'm going to think it's cute. And I'm going to put a window in it with saran wrap and I'm going to lift it to the ceiling. So at the Pied Piper is the first place that I ever did this. And so the ceiling was very high. So I, rigged it up to the ceiling. So the rocket took off and I was inside the rocket. And so I think the reason I'm mentioning all that is because, back then it was nothing but Marilyn Monroe and, people and Diana Ross. And that's all very nice. But it was just basically lots of sequins and big wigs and just plain lip sync.
Glamour drag.
Glamour drag. It was all glam drag. And I've been called many times booger drag, which is the drag that looks as bad as it possibly can, which I think is terrific because if you look at this face, you can tell I'm not fooling anyone.
Well, I saw you perform while we were going to get into Showgirls and the history of Showgirls, your weekly show, but you were wearing, you took your wig off certainly halfway through the show. You basically de-dragified yourself as the night went on. Did you always perform pantsless?
No, I think I replaced that with jumping through flaming hoops because I used to jump through flaming hoops. And then I set the pyramid on fire. And then I was like, I can't do flaming hoops anymore.
Let's actually talk about, this is how I first heard of you, was I had heard the story of you kind of
setting it on fire. Yeah.
Setting the Pyramid Club on fire.
But not total fire, just one girl.
Only one person caught fire?
Yeah, because the hoop. Well, here's the
deal. Go back and take us all the way through the story.
So I decided that I wanted to do something else that no one else was doing. So I said, I think, what do you got to do? Jump through flaming hoops to get a name, to be able to get a gig here. And
Were you living in New York?
Yes. Okay. And I said to myself, and I lived there since I was 15, and I was like, I'll just jump through flaming hoops. Why did I think, So I started. But again, you have to understand that we were also nuts and we didn't believe we would ever harm anyone or ourselves or die or anything. We were invincible. We were young. So I would take a big giant hula hoop and I'd wrap it in cotton and then I would hang it from the ceiling with a wire coat hanger because the ceiling of the pyramid was low enough where I could reach it and hook it into this thing. And then I'd light the hoop on fire at the end of my number and jump through it and land in the audience, and the audience would catch me. So this one week, and it was going really well. I was jumping through flaming hoops all over town. No one was stopping me back then because, they didn't really think that you could actually damage anything with fire back then, I guess. Anyway, this one night I got to the pyramid. I was hungover. I could not find a wire coat hanger. And stupid me, I just took some twine or something and I tied the hoop to the ceiling. And of course, the fire burned through the twine and the hoop bounced on the stage and it landed on this girl's dress. And she was dressed as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I don't know why, but her dress was a little bit on fire. But then I leapt on her and I was putting her out. And then Happy Face came in with a fire extinguisher and then he emptied out the whole pyramid. We all went out to Avenue A and nothing was damaged or anything. But I mean, I did set that girl on fire, but I got her out pretty quick. And then we all went back and then finished the show.
And were you part of like the weekly roster of the Pyramid Club? Like how often were you performing there?
I was doing it for a few years. I bartended there. I was friends with all those kids back, John Sex and all them way back when Pyramid first got going. It was called Whispers on Sunday nights. And then it turned to Happy's Back Door later. But I practically lived at the Pyramid because I loved all the inventions. See, this is pre RuPaul's Drag Race. So the queens back then, it wasn't about the look so much. It was about the idea, which I find far more fascinating and far more fun when people use their minds and think up ideas. Because, again, with a face like this, I was never going for that anyway. But there were so many brilliant people. There was this girl named Frida. Well, her name was actually Barbie. Her real name was Barbie, and she was short, and she would do a doll head with a little crown on it, and she'd put it on top of her head, and then she'd take the things that you wear when you're getting your hair cut, those things, and that would be the dress, and Barbie would just stick her hands out, and she was called Frida the Candy Coated Trita. And all her dialogue was recorded, and she got huge, and she was one of the big stars of Wigstock and everything. And Frida was one of my favorite things. And then they had the dueling bankheads and all these acts that are kind of forgotten now, but they were really genius acts. But again, they weren't about how close they could cinch their waist or how big their wig was. It was about what was going on in their head.
Conceptually. Did you perform at the various Wigstocks? Like in
Yes.
Thompson Square Park? Did you
Yes.
make it over to when they started doing it on the piers?
Yes, I did drag queen mud wrestling one year there, but I think we did kitty litter and chocolate pudding, and the problem was the wrestlers got so scratched up because I forgot the kitty litter would be pretty scratchy to really scratch them up. And then I was in the Wigstock movie, but Loretta Lynn's estate would not allow, because I was born a cross-dresser's daughter compared to coal miner's daughter, but Loretta Lynn's estate would not let me change the words to cross-dresser's daughter. I wonder why, really. I think she was a trumper. She would have been.
So for the audience who may not be familiar with your work, you basically took all
What?
you basically took all of this high concept drag and started your own theater company. It's called the Gold Dust Orphans, and you've put on nearly over 100 plays at this point?
87.
Okay, so we're nearing 100.
We're nearing the 100 mark, and I'm sure I'll get there before I kick it.
And they're done in Boston, Provincetown, New York City, and you basically do parodies of, say, Rocky Horror, Grease.
Classic literature, or
Yeah.
or classic film, or just fun films. Like, for instance, we did the Rocky Menorah Christmas show because I realized that I have so many friends who are Jewish, and I'm always like stuffing Santa, Rudolph, and Jesus down their throat, and I'm like, all right, I got to do something for the Jews. So I was like, we'll do Rocky Menorah. So what the whole plot is the idea that it runs the same idea, except for the fact the villain is Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's going to blow up the entire world with a giant menorah so she can blame it on the Jews. You see what I'm saying? And she's also had her face half blown off by a hand grenade her husband gave her for Christmas, trying to get rid of her. So she's an evil, evil villain. So at the end, everything switches, and sort of like you get sort of not only the Rocky Horror idea, but then you get a whole villain story at the end that explains it's not just magenta and riffraff kind of thing. You know what I mean? So.
No, totally. Like, these are like high production. I mean, it seems, create a lot of the production value. The one where you created the train that was going to go around the audience.
Did I tell you that story? Okay, so we were doing the show called Dragula. This was many years ago.
Yes.
And the theater had these huge platform things that weren't being used for anything. I think they were the old box seats of this theater. So, but they were just flat planes at that point. So I said, if we're going to go travel to Transylvania, we have to travel by train from New York to Transylvania. So we need to build a miniature train track and the whole thing. And we'll do it up on this big platform because the thing is at least 20 feet long. And so we can do a whole thing from, and spotlight it from the Empire State Building to like Dracula's castle, right? So we did all that. But this one week, it was so packed this one night, and the fucking train went off the track. And this lady was sitting underneath, and not only first she got the locomotive, then the next car, and the next, and she just was like smacked in the head so many times. She was bleeding and laughing at the same time. And I'm like, oh, fucking what? And anyway, she was so terrific. All I had to do was give her a t-shirt at the end, and she was happy as a clam. But, well, no more putting trains above people's heads. You never know when they're going to go off the track.
By the way, have you heard about the one serial killer who was in Provincetown? They wrote a book about him.
Oh, yeah. What's his name? My friend had a couple dates with him. What was his name? Yeah. And then he called Versace, right?
Well, they called him the Cape Cod vampire.
Oh, wait. Are you talking about Tony Costa?
Yes. Wait, is there?
Okay.
Wait, who's the other guy? Is this the same person?
The other guy killed Versace. But yeah, so he was hanging. He spent a summer in Provincetown. I knew him. I didn't know him well, but my friends had dates with him and everything. My friend Steve Duckworth. Anyway, the one you're talking about is Tony Costa. And there's a book about him called In His Garden.
Yeah.
And this was in the 70s. And where the Squealing Pig is now, it used to be called the Forecastle. And that's where he picked up all the victims. And he would bring them out to the woods. He was a rather sexy looking guy. So these chicks, we'd get him high enough. And then he'd bring them out to the dunes. And they thought they were going to get it on. And then he would like shoot them with a bow and arrow and stuff. I mean, really crazy stuff. I know where his grave is, actually.
Well, he's buried in the P-Town Cemetery.
Yeah, I know
when you go into P-Town, if you're arriving through Bradford Street, I guess that's where.
Go down Conwell Street, and then you take if you're coming from the highway, you go down Conwell Street and you take a right down the Cemetery Road, and you go down there, and he's off. I think he's to the left, and it just says Tony on the little stone where he's actually buried. His mother is buried, I think, close by, but somewhere else. There's just a little stone. It says Tony on it. It's not. I think it's like painted or something. The last time I was there was so long ago, but I know that he is buried in there. Yeah.
The very first time I've interviewed Margaret Cho a bunch, and the very first time I interviewed her, we were talking about P-Town, and she mentions that she names you as her best friend, and says that she wants to be buried in that cemetery, and that she wants you all to get burial plots next to each other and create a sundial.
No, what it is I told her about this idea and she said, oh, let's do it. So what happened, this is a rather sad story, actually. So me and my friends way back in the early 80s were always together, always. And we said, we just didn't know what we were going to do. And AIDS had begun, and it was sort of like, and we were like, well, what are we going to do? We're all going to drop dead. Well, let's all get buried in the shape of a clock. And I was going to be midnight, and John Dowd was going to be midnight, and I was going to be 6 o'clock. And you know what? So weird. So we named all the different people in the clock, and everyone is dead but me and John Dowd. Every one of those people had died of AIDS that were in our original clock. So I told Margaret about that, and she was like, "Oh, let's do that." So that's what that came from.
So it's a hybrid story. But
it's a hybrid story. But I do have my cemetery plot next to Norman Mailer, and so I'm definitely going to carve on my stone, "I'm with stupid."
I mean, well, that's someone you can talk to when you're dead.
Norman, I talked to him when he was alive. He was cool. He's cool. Oh, but the other side is Astrid. I don't know if you ever met Astrid.
Who's that?
Oh, she owned Pepe's Wharf for a long time. She's nutty girl.
Love Pepe's. Okay, so you started drag basically because there was a contest and the winner would get $100 prize. And so
back then, just $100 would take you through the week.
Yeah, that wasn't just one lobster roll.
No, and you would subsidize it by shoplifting, but you could get through the week for $100 for sure.
How long did you win the whole summer? Like, did that really sustain you?
Yeah. So what happened was I kept winning, and then they got mad at me. They got mad at me because I kept winning. So then they told me I couldn't do it anymore. So then that's when I started Showgirls, because I couldn't do this other contest.
Let's talk about Showgirls. It's been running for about 30 years.
That's so funny.
The idea is, and I went to this last Monday. Currently, it's being hosted at the Provincetown Inn, all the way at the end, past the Red Inn, past the, where the landing is, all the way
that far away. Come on.
But, I mean, it is all the way in one direction. I'm just giving directions. Anyway, the idea is you basically host a variety show, and any performer who is in town that week can sign up through you, and they compete for basically
No ballads.
No ballads. Somebody sang an Alanis Morissette ballad last week.
Whatever that was, I don't know how they got past it, because I fucking hate ballads. So anyway,
this one woman had a phenomenal voice, and it was definitely an Alanis Morissette ballad.
Really?
Yeah. You were on stage.
Well, I know, but I get stoned.
Okay.
Because the drug dealer brings me all these like edibles, and so it's cheaper than drinking.
You know this whole thing that like Gen Z doesn't drink.
It's probably a good idea. I don't know. I mean, what do they do? I don't know.
No, it's more like, oh yeah, like the gays and Gen Z, like they're over drinking because they realize they can just do drugs and stay thin.
Yeah, well, that is, I know this sounds bizarre, but I think that that's a big part of the meth problem in the gay community, is the thin thing, or the thing that they convince themselves they look good because they're not eating or something. I mean, I have the shape of a turtle at this point, but at the same time, I'm 63, so what do I fucking care? I'm just having a good time.
Okay, Showgirls, for every week you have a co-host. And these co-hosts can range from, like, my show was Varla Jean Merman. This past one was Chloe Sevigny because she was in town. Next week, it's Parker Posey. I want to find out how you know Parker Posey, but I think Jennifer Coolidge has done it.
2 weeks ago was Coolidge. Yeah, Jen was here, did it, I think, the week after 4th of July. So whatever, sometime in July.
Do you know Jennifer Coolidge through the New Orleans connection or something else?
I know Coolidge through when she first came here many years ago, like 20 some years ago. And we became pals, and we've just been friends ever since. But I know her from New Orleans. I go to her house in New Orleans too, which is an incredible house. It's so great. Which she's never there because she's always fucking working, which I think is great, honey. I mean, let's face it, and she'll say this too, she's no spring onion. And to get the kind of work she's getting, finally, older actresses are getting work. This is great. It's so stupid, the whole idea that a woman's career is over at what, I mean, this youth obsessed culture is so dumb. I mean, you're cool and young, but not all young people are cool. And I think you know that already.
Of course.
And a lot of the old people are really turds too. So I guess it all evens out in the end.
So I want to talk about your New Orleans connection, but let's finish up with Showgirls. So basically who else was there? The night that I was there, Dina Martina didn't perform, but Dina Martina was sitting in the audience. Trixie Mattel is like in his boy era. So he was on
just trying to get dick. That's all she's doing.
Trixie's like taking a break. So like you'll see Trixie not in drag a lot in P-Town. And is this new, the conceit of having the beds on stage, or has that been that way?
No, it's just something I thought up this year because I had a big problem with the Crown and Anchor, which I'm not alone in that. And so I knew I was going up against a multi-million-dollar, basically almost corporation, and I had to do some new ideas to keep people coming to see me because I thought I was going to have this big war, which I never even picked up the sword, but good for me. In any case, I wanted to be prepared and make sure I gave them something that they couldn't get anywhere else. So I was like, well, I've always loved the idea of box seats in a theater, So I'm like, well, I don't want to make Scott build the box seats, but I think we can just put beds on the sides, and then we'll get sexy people or people who think they're sexy, because sexy is what is the word? Relative. I mean, I call myself.
It's subjective.
subjective. So it's like it's like sexy is as sexy does. I mean, if you're fucking 95 and think you're sexy, then I think you're sexy. I love it. So anyway, but you have to get down to the nitty gritty. You can't be like, wearing your snorkel parka on the beds.
Correct. You have to be in, I guess, a jockstrap.
Yeah, but if it's like dykes and stuff, if they want to wear like, tits out and maybe some panties, that's okay.
Okay, very good. Very good. And the show I saw, this one guy grabbed one of the acts, grabbed one of the people who was in the quote box seat beds and like kind of like threw him in the air and was like twirling him all around. That was crazy.
It was a hostage situation. No,
that was crazy.
He actually knew that queen. So
okay.
he was just trying to show off that he's big enough that he can pick somebody up and twirl him around. He knew the queen.
Well, the audience was totally freaked out, which I guess is the goal.
That's the goal.
Okay.
I think we need to be freaked out just a little bit more. Well, and I think you agree with me on that one.
That's why I thought Showgirls was always so brilliant, because it was where you definitely would see the freakiest shit of the week.
Definitely.
So you had been doing it at the Crown and Anchor. I know earlier this season you'd been doing it at the Pilgrim House. What's the deal with the different venues?
Well, I mean, because, there's so many people who I love who work at the Crown and Anchor. I'd rather not get into it, but simply say that I had a disagreement with the deal, the financial deal with the Crown and Anchor. And so that's what happened there. I didn't know where I was going to go. See, I had a very stressful winter. I was like, where the fuck am I going to go and bring this show where I can seat enough people? And the Pilgrim House was kind enough to put me up for the month of June, but it just Showgirls doesn't fit in there because it's like the space is like a place where you go to view a body. There's no feeling to it. And so then once I got in there, I kept looking, and then I talked to the Provincetown Inn, and they actually went for it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. But we had to build the set. So we needed the month to get it all together. So we opened at the Provincetown Inn July 1st or whatever that was, And now we love it there, and everyone loves it there. So, I mean, we'll be there for a couple of years. But if the Crown and Anchor sells, which I think it will, we'll probably go back there at some point.
Now, did you first start doing drag once you got to P-Town, or had you started a little bit in New York?
I had started in high school. My friend wanted to do a movie called Punching Judy. And he wanted to dress me as Judy Garland, and then he wanted to punch me. And so that was, he didn't really punch me. It was like slow motion, but I was dressed as Judy Garland. It was called Punching Judy. So I was like, oh, I now have a film career. So it was like a Super 8, movie something. But we just thought we were hot shit. So, all of a sudden we were filmmakers now. And then I started doing it. And I always knew I just don't have a feminine face.
Now, you were in the Roy Cohn documentary.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very, very curious about, you call yourself a hooker, but were you an escort? Were you working for a company, like a service?
No, I was a hooker. No, I went to, there were bars on 53rd Street and 3rd, and that's where you would go if you were young and could get in, because I wasn't old enough. And you would go there and you'd meet an eligible gentleman, and they would say how much, and you tell them $100, and then you go home with them and you let them do what they wanted for an hour, and then you make the money, and then you go out and spend the money. And that's what we did. And there was I just the whole thing with my wiener out in the shows and everything. I certainly don't think of it as a turn on of any way. And I wouldn't say I'm an exhibitionist, because I can go to the gym and I don't even take my shirt off, Even to this day, I don't think of the hooking days as oh, I'm so ashamed of myself, or oh, what was I thinking, or poor me, or I've heard people go, oh, when if I tell them the story, if they ask me the story, I tell them and they go, I'm like, oh, it was great. I was making money. I was fucking doing whatever I wanted to do. These gentlemen most of them were pretty nice.
But what's interesting about the Roy Cohn connection is, so you're featured in the doc, and basically you talk about how he basically hires you, but it was just to chat.
Yeah, well, it was very bizarre, because I actually ended up, they brought me, it was I was blindfolded or something. I wasn't blindfolded, but it was very weird. It was the middle of the night. It was these queens that lived on Riverside Drive. I remember them very clearly. And weren't telling me where they were bringing me, but I was like, all right, I'll go for the ride because they were sexy and I was having fun and I don't care. I'll hang out with anyone, right? So I didn't. I mean, I could have easily been kidnapped, but I don't think like that. So I was like, oh, I'll go for the ride. So I went for the ride and met him. Yes, and it was he was bizarre, but he got very testy with me over music or something. I don't remember. And then I went up stairs and had sex with his boyfriend, Harry, who used to own Harry's bar. But they had an open relationship anyway.
Speaking of music, I love how you talk about how you don't understand why the gays like fall over themselves for Beyonce or Madonna. Like I don't understand. You don't get it.
No. I think Beyonce is absolutely beautiful. And my husband actually did her makeup or helped with her makeup for Survivor video and said she was beautiful, wow. Wonderful, wonderful person. I don't get the music though. I never got Madonna ever. I went to see Lady Gaga because someone gave me a ticket and I said, she's a good musician, but I can't remember a single fucking song she sang. I don't remember any of it. I mean, I worship like people like Dinah Washington and like things like songs like that. And, I was raised on country and I love I don't know. I don't get pop music. I absolutely loathe Taylor Swift. I'm sure she's a nice person. I'm sure she's a very nice person. I don't remember a single song she sings. And when I hear it on the radio, I want it turned off immediately. Mm-hmm. That's me. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean, I want her dead. I just don't like her music. You know what I mean?
What's the craziest act that entered the Showgirls contest?
This guy was doing some show. He was calling it like something to do with like, a Streetcar Named Desire. It had nothing to do with Streetcar Named Desire. This queen was just like out of her mind and she thought she was so performance art. And she brought some newspapers out and was talking a little bit like she was Blanche Dubois. Oh, I'm Blanche Dubois, like in a southern accent. I was like, what is this shit? And actually had a show in town that failed. But anyway, puts the newspaper and then just proceeds to piss all over the newspapers on the stage. There was one time that this performance art group came in and they were so horrible and the audience was booing them. And I was like, how about you hurry it up? Right. Because it was supposed to be 3.5 minutes or less. Right. But these queens were just keeping it. And they were like, how about you get some talent or something like that? And I had it. So I'm dressed as a giant vagina and it's actually on video somewhere. And I chased these motherfuckers through. It was fisticuffs, but I don't do that anymore.
How did you wind up in New Orleans?
I started going there in the early 80s and I had a friend named Gloria and she worked for Gambit newspaper, which is sort of like the Village Voice of New Orleans. And she was also the kind of married to the guy from Kool and the Gang, Michael. And so I hung out with her and them. Did we into each other?
I don't think so. But I knew that like you were back and forth between like Provincetown and New Orleans. And to me, it's like a city in drag. It's one of the few cities in the United States.
I like that. That's very good. I like that. It is a city in drag. Yeah.
And it's one of the few cities.
Too much burlesque. A little too much burlesque. I like burlesque, but it's just like so much burlesque, right?
Where would you recommend, aside from like the Always Cabaret, which like is my favorite spot there for performers, if people are going to see something in New Orleans, where would you tell them to go?
I would tell them to go to the Always. Mm-hmm. I would. But also like the Marigny Opera House and stuff like that there's some really incredible places still. But the good thing about New Orleans is the people are very scrappy and they can put together anything in some burned out building, which I think is fantastic and wonderful. And there's some really great burlesque performers there. I've always said about burlesque, it's a great job for a bad dancer. But there are some really great burlesque people in New Orleans. But it's just, there's so much of it. Of course, you have Kitten and Lou, who are absolutely brilliant.
They're the best.
Burlesque at the top of the, that's burlesque that you go, I worship. It's really great.
A girl I dated, I think dated one of them.
Probably Susanna.
Yeah, no, she definitely was like, because that's how I found out about Kitten and Lou when I was living there. And we were dating and she's like, oh yeah, she's like, I went on a few dates with, I forget which one, Kitten or Lou. Do you still have your place in New Orleans?
Yes, I do. And it's very difficult because I understand the problems that people have with Airbnb, but for us, we're there half the year, but we can't be there all year because we had to be here to make money to pay for New Orleans. And so I believe that if you have like one place and meaning only one Airbnb, I don't believe in this get 18 of them and destroy all housing or whatever. But it's you can't Airbnb there anymore. And if I can't Airbnb there anymore, I can't really hold on to the house unless we find a way to do that. And I don't want tenants in there that won't leave. So I don't know what I'm going to do with my house there.
As far as your show, like what are you working on next? Like is your next thing going to be another Christmas show?
Yeah, my next play after this is Rosemary's Baby Jesus. And so it's a mix of Rosemary's Baby and the Nativity, and it's sort of like about a theater company. You'll like it. It's good.
And where will that be put up?
That'll be put up at my theater in Boston, which is in South Boston, and it's an old Lithuanian hall, but it's a giant room. It's bigger than where I am with Showgirls right now.
Wow.
Bigger than that, and the ceilings are higher. So I built a theater in there, and I like to do that because I don't like renting theaters because there's so much shit that they try to add on and everything. I can make a theater I have made a theater out of my front yard. It's very easy to do. And I think that's what I'm saying about New Orleans too. I'd like to see more of that where it's like more solid stuff than just one-off numbers. I would like to see productions and ideas that develop and beginning, middle, and end. I always tell the young queens, they ask for advice. Sometimes they don't. I give it to them anyway. You got to have a beginning, middle, and end. And you got to tell the people the story. It can't just be about how fierce you think you look. I just hate that. But I'm sorry, what was the question you were asking?
I don't even know. but I want to talk about your paintings, which they're on exhibit right now in P-Town. Is this the most money you've ever made in your life, selling the paintings?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I started painting when the pandemic started because, I'm a workaholic. I work all the time. In fact, I just went to the beach today for the first time in 10 years because if I lay somewhere, I'm always thinking, what could I be doing? Why aren't I not doing that? I was supposed to do that poster 2 days ago. Yes, the money I've made from the paintings. So I started doing during the pandemic because I'm a workaholic. And so I just kept doing them and people liked them. And then someone said, you should have a website. So I did that. And then people started ordering like sandals, beach towels, bags, pillows of my work. And I'm like, well, I guess this painting thing is working out. So I just kept doing it. Yeah. So I sold. The only thing that's not selling are those nudes. They're freaked out by the nudes.
But a lot of people are commissioning portraits. Like I read Rufus Wainwright. I think it was Parker Posey, Rufus Wainwright, and MARGARET CHO. They all commissioned portraits of themselves from you. And what was the one? Jennifer Coolidge wanted a scene out of Rosemary's Baby.
I told Coolidge that I was going to paint her portrait. And then I painted it. This is a funny story. And then I painted it, and I don't think she liked it. And she texted somebody, what do I say, or something. But it came to me, the text. And so I said, Jen, you don't have to like it. It's totally cool. And she just was like, let me call you. I'm at work. Let me call you. And she got all freaked out thinking I wasn't mad at her. And then I had put it up online. I think that's how she saw it because I don't think I sent it.
You put the text message up online?
No, I know I would never.
Oh, the artwork. Okay.
The artwork. Okay. And then just as I was talking to her, someone said, how much for the Coolidge? And I told them and they bought it. And I say, oh, just so you know, I just sold it. So it's all fine. So we laughed about that and then it was over. So I'm not going to be painting any more pictures of Coolidge. Well, I might, somebody else might buy one, but I don't think Coolidge likes any paintings of her, So anyway, it's a really good one, I think, because it has Armageddon going on in the background, but she's got her Emmy and it's called Coolidge Hangs On, because the reason I painted that was because her Emmy Award speech, I didn't see it, but I heard that she just kept going even though they tried to stop her.
Yes.
And I said, and so the painting was basically saying, even during Armageddon, Coolidge won't be stopped when she gets a chance to tell, and she deserves it because she's a hard fucking worker and she's a great comedian, great actress.
And this coming week at Showgirls, our very own Parker Posey is going to be the special guest. And I know she's done it in the past. How did you first meet Parker?
Parker came to town years and years ago for the film fest, and someone from the film fest brought her to Showgirls, and I knew them, and so they brought her back to meet me, and immediately it was like pals. So then I hornswaggled her into co-hosting with me, and that bitch fucking drank me under the table. She was still sitting up, but I was so loaded by the end. And anyway, that's a funny story about her, me and her, but the girl can put it away and still stay perfectly poised.
I've seen her years ago. I saw her walking alone through Penn Station.
Yeah.
And something was going on. Yeah.
She's a very deep thinker. She's an incredibly intelligent woman. She's actually going to be here in 2 days. I'm actually so excited about her White Lotus because I love Coolidge's White Lotus, but I also think that Parker's going to do a great job.
Now, when, say, Jennifer Coolidge or Parker Posey comes and they're in Provincetown, do you invite them to stay with you or do they stay at a hotel?
Parker stays with me. Coolidge likes it fancier, I think, so she likes to stay at hotels. But Coolidge was here on the Kamala Harris thing, which I'm so excited. Are you excited?
I'm extremely excited. And Women's Crafts, which is a shop sort of it's near on the gallery side of P-Town. It's a shrine to Kamala. Now, it's very funny. It's hilarious.
We need it.
Just very quickly, going back to your house. So Parker's going to be staying with you. Your house was built in the 1700s. And there's another P-Town Instagram that highlights old homes or just homes in general in P-Town. And yours and Scott's is one of the one. And there's like a whole photo shoot if you want to see inside your bathroom, and it's online. And it's so cute. Like, did you rent it? Like, to what extent is it renovated?
I need a better photo shoot than that. I need a better photo. This place is fucking great. I mean, this is the thing is, these queens there were these druggy queens who had made this place into a kind of a sex house. So when we got it, I went to Tracy Primavera, who's this gorgeous dyke who I don't think she's here anymore, but I love her so much. And I said, Tracy, because she used to sage houses. And I said, Tracy, I hear you sage houses. She said, yes. I said, how much do you charge, Tracy? She said, $50. I said, what can you do for 100? So she came here and saged this place she was like, oh, bad spirits. So she got them all out. But the thing was, those queens were so busy trying to get sex that they didn't mess up. They didn't Home Depot my house at all. So the house has been in the same family, the Baker family, for many years before they got it. And so we're like the third owner. So it was the Bakers owned it for ever and ever and ever, then these queens, and now us. And so it hasn't been changed. So next time you're in town, come over, because you won't believe how gorgeous it is here. And I need to take more pictures.
To what extent did you renovate it?
I didn't renovate it. I would never renovate anything.
So it's in its original form, like the bathroom, kitchen?
Yes, but remember this. All records of the Provincetown Town Hall burnt down in 1850. So all records that were in that building burned, and they were gone. So many houses, including mine, including Nickerson, they claim to be the oldest house in town. But they're too close to the water. That's how I know. We're up on a hill, on a knoll. Okay. So anyway, it doesn't matter. We're all marked as 1850 because that's when the records burned. So they lost all records. So if you go to Barnstable County Courthouse to look at the records, you'll see everything's 1850. But a historian came in and looked at the nails and looked at everything and said, yes, that this was around 1740. So there you have it. It's a beautiful old house, and I'm not going to change it. And my grandson's not going to change it when I leave it to him when I die. And there's got to be some legal thing that does not allow it to be changed. I won't allow it. This will not become drywall and granite countertops and stainless steel appliances and whatever else they're doing. Anderson windows. No.
How did you meet your husband?
He is 11 years younger than me, and I did not know that. He's always been absolutely gorgeous. And when I met him through some friends, and I asked him to take a motorcycle ride with me on my motorcycle because I had a beautiful motorcycle before I got in a motorcycle accident. That's another story. Anyway, he was supposed to show up. He didn't. Then I saw him the year after. I said, "When are we going on that motorcycle ride?" He said, "I'll meet you." And then he ditched me again. And then the year after that, I was doing Showgirls, and he came dressed in drag, and I didn't know it was him. And he won the contest and then told me who he was. And then we haven't been apart since.
Wow.
And that's 30 some years. I've tried to get rid of him. It doesn't work. I can't this is one relationship I can't sabotage. I've tried. Help me, Jess.
Final question. Why did you come to P-Town all those years ago? I mean, you live there basically 50%, 6 months out of the year. Why did you come to P-Town and stay?
I got a free ride from those dykes that I loved. They gave me a free ride.
Okay, let me rephrase. What has kept you in P-Town?
I don't think I'd fit in anywhere else. I'm a bit of a freak. I mean, not in a dangerous way. I'm not, but I am a bit of a freak. I mean, I'm just, I think differently. I don't like Taylor Swift. That makes me a freak. Right
no,
there.
I know exactly. You mean, you remind me of, there's this other drag artist, Lee Bowery.
I'm getting shaped like Lee Bowery lately.
But in the sense that your form of art, you're not impersonating a woman. It's more ridiculous and it's theatrical, and that's even how your plays are. They're not meant to be like, they're actually meant to be intended straight. I think like the way you even like direct your cast is like, we're doing this crazy version of The Exorcist where everyone is in drag, but play it straight, like you're actually afraid.
Absolutely, because the worst thing anyone can do is try to be funny. Trying to be funny is the wrong thing to do. You can try and think of something clever, but in comedy, the worst thing you can do is try to be funny. I hire people who would never get cast anywhere else, and yet they're great in my shows because I know I can see their soul a little bit, so I know where to place them and make them shine the brightest that I can.
And it's a whole theater. Like, is it the same cast that does all of your production, or is it an evolving troupe?
Some of them have been with me for 25 years, and some of them have been with me for 5, and it just depends. But most of them stay. Usually somebody gets pregnant or they get married or they move. But other than that, they stay in the shows because the shows are fun and they get paid well and they have a wonderful time. And some of them, they come out on stage and they get automatic entrance applause. And because I don't do programs, I just don't believe in like sweeping up programs at the end of every show where people throw them on the floor. Something really turns me off about that. But I believe that your real bio should be when you come on stage. If you get applause coming on stage, honey, you made it. You know what I mean? Even if it's just a little silly thing like my theater company, if these 350 people recognize you and are clapping, you made it. You did it. They know you, they see you, they love you for who you are. I think that's great. You know what I mean?
I do. Ryan Landry, this has been so much fun. I know you're Captain Ryan Landry on Instagram. People can find you on Facebook. If they want to keep in touch, like obviously Showgirls is every Monday at the Provincetown Inn. And then do you know the date of the Christmas show?
December 4th through the 23rd.
And that's in Boston.
In Boston.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry. This is me, honey.
This is great. I'm definitely going to come to the Christmas show this year in Boston.
Let me know.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.